You feel like you're failing because you can't stick to one thing. You start a painting series and swear you're going to finish it. Then you discover a coding boot camp and your brain lights up like someone flipped a switch. You spend nights learning, building, testing, tweaking. You make progress, real progress, and then, almost without warning, you're deep into podcasting. You buy a mic, learn the software, plan episodes, research guests. Then you're reading about botany at midnight, watching videos on soil composition, convinced you finally found the thing you should have been doing all along. By the time you've barely scratched the surface, you're already onto the next thing. And your inner critic never lets up. It doesn't argue politely. It doesn't offer suggestions. It hits you with that blunt, familiar line. Why can't you be like everyone else? Why can't you just choose? Why do you keep doing this? Maybe you've tried to muscle through it. Maybe you've promised yourself you'll finally lock in. Maybe you've tried productivity systems, accountability partners, rigid schedules, guilt-driven discipline. For a while, it works until it doesn't. And when it doesn't, you don't just feel disappointed. You feel defective, like your mind is built wrong, like you're missing the one trait everyone else seems to have: the ability to commit to a single path and stay there. Here's the part no one tells you, and it matters more than most career advice you'll ever hear. You're not broken. You're not undisciplined. You're not lazy. You might be the exact type of mind the next decade needs most, because the world you're living in is not built for the old model of success. The old model was simple: pick a field, get certified, stay put, choose a lane early, climb a ladder, stack titles, retire with a neat story that makes sense to everyone at Thanksgiving. That story is fading, not because effort doesn't matter anymore, not because skills are irrelevant, but because the environment has changed so fast that a single, narrow identity is becoming a risk. AI is automating single skill work at a pace most people still don't emotionally understand. If your value is defined by doing one narrow task repeatedly, especially one that lives behind a screen, systems are now learning to do that task faster, cheaper, and at scale. And it isn't limited to obvious roles. It's not just factory lines or basic admin work. It's analysis, it's design, it's customer support, it's routine legal drafting. It's a growing number of things that 5 years ago were considered safe. So if you've been feeling restless, as if your mind refuses to settle into one specialized box, that might not be a weakness. It might be a signal, not a signal that you can't focus something deeper, a signal that your nervous system doesn't trust stability the way it used to, a signal that you're adapting, even if you don't have the words for it. Because the most valuable roles emerging right now aren't held by people who only know one thing. They're held by people who can weave together psychology, technology, storytelling, strategy, design, leadership, and human behavior, sometimes all in one week. That is the M-shaped future, not a ladder, not a straight line, not one towering pillar. A series of peaks separate areas of depth connected by a bridge. The ability to integrate, the ability to translate, the ability to carry insights from one domain into another and create something that didn't exist before. Your so-called distraction might be your most underrated advantage. You don't lack focus. You have multi-dimensional focus. And while other people are clinging to outdated definitions of success, definitions built for a slower world, you may already be training for the world that's here. Now let's talk about why this feels so uncomfortable. Because if this is a gift, why does it feel like a problem? It feels like a problem because you were raised on a model that only recognizes two types of competence. Type 1, the specialist. The person who goes deep becomes the expert and is rewarded for precision. The surgeon, the engineer, the accountant, the guy who can answer any question inside a narrow domain because he spent years drilling down. Type 2, the generalist. The person who knows a little about a lot, helpful, flexible, broadly capable, but rarely perceived as elite. Most advice tells you to pick one of those roles and commit, but many men don't fit cleanly into either box. Some men are built to go deep, then shift, then go deep again. They don't thrive inside one permanent identity. They thrive in complexity. They can obsess, learn fast, build competence, then feel the pull toward another domain, not because they're flaky, but because their mind is scanning for leverage, overlap, and new patterns. That's not lack of direction. That's a different kind of direction. The real mistake is assuming the only way to be disciplined is to do the same thing forever. That's not discipline, that's inertia. Discipline is the ability to direct your attention on purpose, and in the modern world, attention is a weapon. It's also a liability. It can build your life or scatter your life depending on how you use it. So the question isn't, why can't I stick to one thing? The better question is, how do I build a life that makes my mind an asset instead of a constant source of guilt? To answer that, you need to understand the environment you're operating in. There's an idea from psychology that explains it well. Kind environments versus wicked environments. A kind environment has stable rules and reliable feedback. Practice leads to predictable improvement. You can master the game because the game stays the same. Chess is kind. Golf is kind. Learning to play a classical piece is kind. The rules don't shift under your feet. A wicked environment is different. In a wicked environment, the rules change. Feedback is delayed or confusing. What worked yesterday might fail tomorrow because the context changed. Careers are wicked. Markets are wicked. Technology is wicked. Social dynamics are wicked. Business models are wicked. Most of adult life is wicked. In a wicked environment, specialists can still thrive, but only if their specialization remains valuable. If the world shifts, the specialist becomes vulnerable, not because he isn't smart, because he built his identity around something that assumed stability. That's why so many men quietly panic when their industry changes. They don't just fear losing income, they fear losing relevance. They fear the humiliation of becoming a beginner again. They fear being exposed. You might be built differently. You might be the kind of person who becomes a beginner repeatedly. And instead of seeing that as weakness, you need to recognize what it really is: learning agility, cognitive flexibility, the ability to move. And that ability matters because the modern economy increasingly rewards men who can adapt, integrate, and solve problems that don't come with instructions. Here's the uncomfortable truth: if you are only valuable inside one narrow box, you are easier to replace. A system can be trained for a narrow box. A machine excels at narrow boxes. A workflow can replicate narrow boxes. But what can't be easily replicated is the ability to connect dots across domains and create new solutions when the old ones stop working. Machines don't connect sociology to sound design. Machines don't take the psychology of grief, translate it into a narrative people can feel, then build a tool that helps someone process that grief in a way that's actually humane. Machines can generate content. They can optimize. They can mimic patterns. But they don't live inside the human condition. They don't carry years of messy experience across different arenas and turn it into wisdom. You do. Now, let's address something important. Some of you hear this and immediately want to turn it into a new excuse, a justification for endless dabbling, a reason to never finish anything. That's not what this is. The M-shaped future is not do whatever you want, whenever you want. It is not chaos. It is architecture. An M-shaped person builds multiple pillars of depth over time, connected by the bridge of synthesis, not shallow interests, not constant novelty, real competence, enough depth to produce value. The difference between a scattered man and an M-shaped man is not the number of interests. It's whether he builds peaks. A peak is not perfection. A peak is a finished loop, a tangible outcome, something that proves your effort turned into capability. A peak might be a portfolio of designs, a product you built, a short documentary you edited, a series of essays you shipped, a tool you coded and deployed, a set of clients you served, a skill you can reliably apply under pressure. Peaks give you confidence because they become evidence. Evidence quiets the inner critic. Evidence turns identity into something solid. And the reason you feel behind is because you've been measuring yourself by the wrong geometry. You've been comparing your path to a ladder. The ladder says, pick one rung, climb steadily, never look sideways, never step off. But your path is not a ladder. Your path is a network, a zigzag of expertise, a sequence of seasons. That's why the shame hits you when you compare yourself to men who stayed in one lane. They might have titles. They might have a straight story. They might have a clean timeline, but a clean timeline is not the same as a strong mind. A straight path is not the same as a resilient life. The men who will be hardest to break are not always the men with the neatest resumes. They are the men with options, the men with multiple pillars, the men who can pivot without begging for permission. And if you're honest, you've been collecting options your whole life. You thought you were wasting time. You thought you were failing, but what if you were building redundancy? In nature, redundancy isn't waste, it's survival. If a system has no backup, one failure ends it. If a system has redundancy, it absorbs shock, it adapts, it continues. Your skills can become redundancy. If one industry collapses, you don't collapse with it. If one platform dies, your livelihood doesn't die with it. If one role gets automated, your identity doesn't evaporate with it. That's what it means to be hard to kill in a changing world. Now, there's another piece of this that most people miss, and it's the reason your mind keeps pulling you into new domains, even when you want to be normal. Novelty is not just a preference. Novelty is a neurochemical engine. Many men who struggle to stick to one thing aren't weak. They're wired to stay alive through learning. Their motivation isn't powered by repetition. It's powered by discovery, challenge, and expansion. Monotony kills motivation. Variety fuels it. This isn't a moral issue. It's a mechanical issue. It's how your brain allocates attention. When your brain senses growth, it releases drive. When your brain senses stagnation, it withdraws interest. So you don't get bored because you're immature. You get bored because your mind is built to crave progress, not comfort. That can be a gift. It can also be dangerous if you let it run your life. Because novelty without structure becomes addiction. Structure without novelty becomes a prison. The solution is not to eliminate novelty. The solution is to control it, to turn it into a tool. And the way you do that is by thinking in seasons. A season is a defined period where you commit to one main pillar while maintaining the others lightly. You don't try to build every pillar at once. You don't force yourself into permanent identity. You build in phases. This is how men with multi-domain minds win without burning out. They build one peak at a time. They finish enough to extract value. They stack completed loops. They let their identity evolve, not collapse. Here's what a season can look like in real life. A 12-week season where you go deep on coding and ship one functional product. A 10-week season where you train a combat sport and build discipline, endurance, and confidence. A season where you learn storytelling and publish consistently until you have a body of work. A season where you focus on income and stability, then return to creative work with less pressure. A season where you build a business system, then step back and develop a new skill. Seasons give your mind a container, a boundary, a finish line. And finish lines are everything. Because a mind like yours can generate infinite beginnings. The only thing you need is a repeatable way to complete. Now, let's talk about the part nobody wants to admit. Your issue might not be that you have too many interests. Your issue might be that you've been using new interests to escape the discomfort of being seen. Starting is safe. Starting is private. Starting keeps your identity intact because you can always say, I could be great at this if I wanted. Finishing is different. Finishing puts your work in the world. Finishing invites judgment. Finishing forces you to confront your actual level, not your potential. A lot of men avoid finishing because finishing threatens the ego. And the ego fights back with a familiar strategy. Move on to something new. So if you want to turn your multi-interest mind into an advantage, you need one skill above all, the ability to close loops. Not to become perfect, not to become a machine, to close loops. Because closed loops become assets. Closed loops become proof. Closed loops become leverage. Closed loops become income. Closed loops become confidence. Closed loops become identity. Now, let's bring AI back into this because it's not just background noise. It's shaping the playing field. In a world where systems can generate images, text, code, and analysis, the value shifts. The value moves away from raw production and toward judgment, integration, and direction. If a tool can produce 100 options in seconds, the scarce skill becomes choosing the right option. If a system can generate a landing page, the scarce skill becomes understanding the psychology of the buyer, the story that resonates, and the design that creates trust. If AI can write code, the scarce skill becomes defining the problem correctly, architecting the solution, and understanding the human reality. The solution lives inside. That's where cross-domain fluency becomes power, because the men who win in this environment aren't just operators. They're orchestrators. They can speak tech and human. They can speak product and psychology. They can speak storytelling and systems. They can speak design and business. That's the bridge. That's the M shape. And it explains why some of the most exciting roles now are hybrids. Roles that don't fit old titles. Roles that exist because someone was willing to combine fields that were previously separate. Those roles weren't created by tradition. They were created by integrators, someone who understood human behavior and user experience, someone who understood ethics and data, someone who understood education and product, someone who understood trauma-informed design and technology, someone who could see what needed to exist and then build it. This is why your random interests aren't random. They are nodes in a personal operating system. Photography teaches composition, patience, and attention to detail. Podcasting teaches communication, listening, persuasion, and narrative structure. Botany teaches systems, thinking, cycles, and the humility of nature. Coding teaches logic, iteration, and problem decomposition. Writing teaches clarity, thinking, and the ability to lead with ideas. Fitness teaches discipline, energy management, and respect for the body. Each interest is a tool. The question is whether you're building a toolbox or just collecting toys. A toolbox is useful because it's organized. You know what you have. You know when to use it. You can build with it. Toys are just novelty. They entertain you, then they sit in a corner. So how do you turn your curiosity into a toolbox? You build a system, not a rigid prison, a system that respects how you work. Here's a framework you can use without overcomplicating it. Step 1. List your core domains. Pick 5 to 7, not 20. The ones that have consistently called you back over years. The ones that create that electric buzz where you feel more alive, more focused, more yourself. Don't rank them by income yet. Don't shame yourself. Just list them. Step 2. Find your overlaps. This is where your future lives. Writing psychology becomes a persuasion. Education, coaching, content strategy. Design tech becomes product, UX, tools, systems. Fitness storytelling becomes transformation work, community building, leadership. Biology branding becomes sustainability, health products, science communication. Finance narrative becomes behavioral economics, personal finance content, strategy. The overlap is rarely accidental. The overlap is your signature. Step 3. Choose your primary pillar for the next season. 1, not 2, not 5. The point is not to give up everything else. The point is to create momentum. Pick the pillar that will give you the biggest return right now. Return can mean income. Return can mean confidence. Return can mean opportunity. Return can mean stability. Choose what matters in this season of your life, not what sounds impressive. Step 4. Define a concrete outcome. Not get better, not learn, not explore. A real deliverable, a portfolio piece, a product, a published series, a client result, a completed program, a competition, a finished project you can point to and say, that exists because I did the work. This is how you stop feeling like an imposter. You build evidence. Step 5. Create maintenance rituals for the other domains. Maintenance is the difference between a man who evolves and a man who abandons himself. 2 short sessions a week, 1 long session every other weekend. A small ritual that keeps the skill alive. It keeps you from feeling trapped. It keeps your identity intact. It keeps your curiosity fed while your main pillar grows. Step 6. Build a public trail. This is where men hesitate, but it matters. You don't need to become an influencer. You don't need to perform. You need a record, a place where your work exists. A simple website, a newsletter, a portfolio, a repository, a channel, a page. Why? Because the modern economy rewards visible competence. Not just I can do this, but here's what I've built. That trail attracts opportunities you can't predict. It gives people a way to trust you. It gives your future self a way to remember what you've done. Step 7. Run the season, then review. At the end of the season, you don't judge yourself emotionally. You review like an operator. What did I build? What did I learn? What surprised me? What drained me? What gave me energy? What can I simplify? What should I deepen next? This is how you become strategic. Now let's talk about the emotional layer again, because strategy alone won't carry you if your identity keeps collapsing. A lot of men have been taught a quiet lie, that maturity means narrowing, that if you're still curious, you're childish, that if you still want multiple things, you're unfocused, that if you don't choose one identity, you'll never be respected. That's a story built for a different economy. The future doesn't reward men who cling to one identity at all costs. It rewards men who can become multiple identities without losing themselves. Not scattered, layered, not lost, distributed, not inconsistent, adaptive. There's a difference between being unreliable and being versatile. Versatility is reliable adaptability. It's the ability to say, I can learn this, I can handle change, I can build what's needed. That trait is becoming rarer, not more common, because so many men are being trained into passive consumption and fragile attention. If you can train your attention, if you can build seasons, if you can close loops, you will separate from the pack fast. Because most people don't have a skill problem. They have a follow-through problem. And follow-through is trainable. Not by shaming yourself. Shame doesn't build men. Shame breaks men. You build follow-through by making completion smaller, clearer, and repeatable. Start with loops you can close. Stack wins. Build confidence. Then build bigger. Now, you might be thinking, what about the past? What about all the half-finished projects? What about the time I wasted? Let's reframe it correctly. Some of that time was wasted. Be honest. Everyone wastes time. But much of what you call waste was exploration. Exploration isn't useless. Exploration is how you map reality. You are learning what you like. You are learning what you don't like. You are learning how you learn. You are learning your strengths, your triggers, your limits. You are learning what kind of work makes you feel alive. That is not failure. That is reconnaissance. The only mistake is staying in permanent reconnaissance and never building. So you don't need to erase your past. You need to extract it. Take the skills you picked up, even the partial ones, put them into a list. Name the tools you gained, then decide what you're building next. Because the future isn't going to hand you a title that perfectly matches you. If you're M-shaped, you won't be hired the way specialists are hired. You will be chosen because you can solve problems other people can't. You will be paid because you can integrate. You will be trusted because you can translate. You will win because you can build a unique combination that the market can't easily copy. And the men who lead the next decade won't be chosen for pedigree alone. They'll be chosen because they didn't wait for permission to combine the dots. They'll be chosen because they built a portfolio instead of begging for a job title. They'll be chosen because they cultivated skill redundancy instead of fragile specialization. They'll be chosen because they can operate in wicked environments without panicking. If you're hearing this and feeling relief, good. But relief isn't the finish line. Ownership is. Ownership is when you stop apologizing for your mind. Ownership is when you stop letting other people's fear define your identity. Ownership is when you stop asking, what's wrong with me? And start asking, how do I use this? So here's the closing challenge. Stop demanding that you choose one path for the rest of your life. That's not wisdom. That's fear disguised as maturity. Instead, choose one peak to build next. Choose one season. Choose one deliverable. Choose one loop to close. Then protect your energy. Keep your other interests alive on maintenance and build something real. Not because you need to prove yourself to strangers. Because you're tired of living in guilt. Because you're tired of carrying unfinished versions of yourself. Because you're ready to convert curiosity into capability. You were never meant to be one thing. That wasn't your flaw. It was your design. While the world still teaches men to pick a lane, the future is already moving through the cracks between lanes, through the overlaps, through the hybrids, through the integrators. You don't need to fix your restlessness. You need to discipline it. You need to aim it. You need to build a system that turns it into output. Every interest you chased, every project you started, every time you felt like an imposter, those weren't detours. They were waypoints. They were training. The M-shaped future doesn't reward conformity. It rewards synthesis. It rewards the man who can blend psychology with code, craft with communication, passion with purpose, and turn that blend into something useful. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not late. You are primed. The skills you've collected aren't fragments. They're components of a new kind of intelligence. And right now, that intelligence isn't just valuable. It's becoming essential. So stop asking if you should choose. Start asking, which peak will you climb? Next, and when you do, remember this, you didn't find your path. You built it, one deliberate season at a time.